Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. Today we're doing the second part on the Is It Worth Doing series. Last video we did it on Buckingham Palace. Today we're doing it on another one of the 4 dungeons, and that is the Kembaalung Village dungeon. Now this one is kind of at an awkward level. It's at level 25, which means Mount Olympus is in 5 levels. So already it may seem like it's not worth doing. I will answer that question by the end of it, but I wanted to kind of give a reason why you may not have done it or you may not think it's worth farming for. But let's get into the actual main plot itself. At level 25, you are summoned by Sergeant Major Talbot in Krakatopia, and he basically says an expedition has gotten lost. They were going to Kembaalung Village, which is technically a part of Mushu and the Pagoda of Harmony, and Lord Beagle and an expeditionary force went there and got lost. So we need to find a way to get there, and the best way to do that is to look around for a merchant who is actually traveling there, which we find right here, Captain Woku, going to Kembaalung Village. This is actually a really pretty view up here, not gonna lie, I do really like this. Pretty cool looking. But you go to Kembaalung Village, but basically you find out that there's some stuff running amok, and Lord Beagle has been taken by some evildoers, and to actually fix that, you need to clear out the pagodas and actually save him. So see, you can see here, you talk to the Dalai Lama, and he's like, yo, what's poppin'? We're looking for someone. Pretty cool. Let's get through the dungeon. Now, there are some important things to note about this first part, the Pagoda of Harmony. First off, there is 3 mob fights and then a boss fight, and they're all incredibly easy. The second thing to note is you'll notice over there on the left side of my screen, there is a gong. That gong has a symbol on it, and that symbol is incredibly important because that symbol directly is the answer to the riddle in the next part. Now, I will display that when we actually get to it in the next part, but I figured I would at least tell you that's how you're supposed to find it anyway, and it might be worth it to just kind of write down or memorize what order they're in. Again, I'll tell you if you don't want to remember it, but that's just a little tip. Now, for this first part, you need to go through activating the shrines. Nothing too out of the ordinary, but what does this first part have to offer you beyond that? Well, there is a little bit of XP. I'm pretty sure I've already done this once, so you should be getting around 3,000 XP, which is actually quite a bit of XP for this level. It's a decent amount for level 25, so that might be worth doing just for the XP to give you a little bit of a boost before you go into Mushu. I just stun resistant, I'm a god. In regards to other things this dungeon has to offer though, realistically, it's actually not that much. These guys don't drop anything too much of value, and I'm pretty sure the boss at the end only drops the tier 2 gear. I believe there's 2 tiers of gear. The tier 1 gear, which is the better of the gear, and then the tier 2 gear, which obviously is the worst of the gear. So I'm pretty sure this part realistically isn't worth farming all that much. So you can see here's the boss, and this is the end of the dungeon. This guy, again, doesn't really drop all that much. He does drop wooden skeleton keys, so you might want one of those. And you can see that there's actually a wooden skeleton key door behind him. That door is just a treasure chest that drops some extra items. Nothing too crazy, to be completely honest. Nothing entirely of value. All right, so I didn't really get much that dungeon. I looked at it. I didn't really get any drops, to be completely honest. Again, you can use this wooden skeleton key and get some extra treasure, but I don't think it's entirely worth doing. But that is the first part done and dusted with. Again, nothing too much of value. Now that you beat that first part, it's found out that Lord Beagle is being kept in the Hollow Mountain. The Hollow Mountain is another part of the Kembaalung Village, and it's this long mountainous area. So there's actually a few fights here, so I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm probably just going to skip through some of them. But in regards to fights, there is this first one right here from these guys. They don't drop anything too good. They drop the level 25, I believe, tier 2 robes, so not the actual better ones. And then obviously there's this next fight over here. These guys actually drop something potentially of value, and the first piece of gear that I would say is actually worth farming for. If you are a balance, these guys drop something really important. These guys drop an amulet, and that amulet gives a feint treasure card. Now, why this is important is that this means that you can feint stack at a much earlier level than usual. Usually you're not able to feint stack until level 50 when you get Jewel of the Feint. Without Amulet, you can't get it until you get Potent Trap in Azteca. But in regards to this dungeon, you can actually get that drop on a balance much earlier. You can get a level 25 drop for Feint. There's two versions of this amulet. One gives just the Feint treasure card, and one gives Feint and Balance Blade. Pretty cool at level 25. But now that you've beaten those hoof things, you can actually make it here to the puzzle. So this right here is the solution of the puzzle. Once you input those, activate this brazier right here, and he will let you through. Now again, if you get it wrong, you will have to fight him. Potential reasons why you'd fight him is he actually also drops the Feint amulet. And again, this is a balance only thing, so if you're another school wanting to get it, you cannot. Sadly, balance only. Basically, I would recommend for most people, just get that puzzle right and then move on. All right, so that was another quick fight, and then we have an actual boss right here. This boss drops some of the tier 2 gear and also, again, that amulet that's pretty useful. So this is a potential source of that, but I wouldn't say he's anything too special beyond that. He doesn't have any major cheats or anything. You can just hit him. He's really easy. He has like 1700 health. Not that difficult of a boss. Fun fact, he actually has like 1300 health because I just beat him with that minus 50 on him. So nothing too crazy. And then you get to this last room here. This room is quite a bit different than the others because obviously this is the final boss. This is where Lord Beagle is, and you can see they're kind of praising this giant statue that's kind of terrifying. But Master Tonkatsu here, he's been like mind controlled and stuff, and he has these bowls. Now these bowls aren't actually anything like too special. They'll use different things. So you can see like that one uses shields, that one has like pip gain. Basically they are just kind of support bowls. They're here to support him in his endeavors. Now this guy is basically an average boss with one exception. He does have a cheat that isn't really a major cheat, but is a cheat nonetheless. His cheat is that at the end of every round, every wizard will be hit with a 100 damage balance spell. Now this isn't anything like super huge and super major, like it won't kill you probably, but it could be potentially worth to pack some heals for that. But realistically, you just kind of beat him up like a normal boss. That cheat isn't anything super major, but he will do it. But you beat him up, and from this guy you can get a few things. First off, you can get the tier 1 gear. I don't believe this is actually the tier 1 gear. I think this is the tier 2 gear, could be wrong. Also, you can get some rings, some athames, and that's really it. This part gives you a little bit of XP, and then you are finished with it. That's the end of the dungeon, and that's what to expect from it. Now let's go over the gear drops and the drops itself beyond what I've been saying. Is the level 25 gear worth it? No, absolutely not. Now, the reason why I say this and why I feel like this should be obvious is the fact that this dungeon is only 5 levels before Mount Olympus. You do this dungeon right before Mount Olympus, and that completely negates any purpose of getting this gear because this gear is much, much worse than Zeus gear. I don't know why they put this dungeon right before Mount Olympus because I'm almost positive this was added after Mount Olympus. It's just kind of here for no reason, and that gear definitely isn't as good as Zeus gear, like not even close to as good. I think the Storm gear maybe gives like 10 damage on the robe, whereas Mount Olympus gives like 15 on the robe. It's just not comparable. In terms of other rewards like Athame, rings, amulets, again, I said the balance amulet is pretty good, but there's one other drop you could potentially want to do, and that is the balance ring. Now, the reason why you might want that balance ring is it's one of the only rings in this game that gives universal resist. I don't know why, but it gives 2 universal resist. So you could potentially want that as a balance. You're obviously not going to use it at like level 100, but it could be good for this early game, especially if you have Heart Steel and a pet. You could potentially get up to like 30 universal resist incredibly early in this game, which is pretty cool actually. So potentially you could want to farm for that, but the other schools do not hold the same thing. No other ring has universal resist. No other amulet has feint. So realistically, with that being said, what else does this dungeon have to offer? Potentially some wooden skeleton keys, some XP if you want it, but that's really it. This dungeon doesn't have a lot to offer beyond that. The gear just isn't that good, except for balance. So the question of the day, is this dungeon worth doing? I would say no. Realistically, this dungeon isn't worth doing at all unless you want that little bit of extra XP or if you're a balance. That's the one caveat. If you were a balance, yes, this dungeon is worth doing, especially for that amulet. Feint stacking in this game, I can't stress enough, is incredibly powerful, especially early game. that early game double feint will be amazing against just about any boss, which is really, really good. So if you're a balance, potentially you should farm this, and I will actually say you definitely should farm this at level 25. Every other school, no. But that's really it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that this dungeon is worth doing? Or did you learn something? You know, did you learn about this dungeon? Hopefully I taught you guys whether or not you should do this. Realistically, no. It's not really worth doing all that much beyond the XP. But that's it. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.